Down in left hand.
Oh, there we
Yep, it should be on the.
Alright, so I'll just start it.
Okay. Oh. So
Stream
it's streaming. Yeah. So remember, one of the things that we need to do
it. Is mute
is mute the
mic.
mute the mic.
Hello and welcome to this Parents Webcast from the College of Arts and Sciences at the University of Pennsylvania. My name is Paul Snigowski and I'm the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. I'm joined to my right by Dr. Janet Ty, who is the Dean of First Year Students and Director of Academic Advising, and Dr. Rebecca Poirot, an Assistant Dean for Academic Advising. We're here in this session to answer families' questions about their students, questions about student life, questions about academics. Before we do that, I'd like to just give a couple of updates. A reminder to your students, families, that advanced registration starts on October 29th. And before that, pre-majors advisees will need to make an appointment and visit with their pre-major advisor. The substance of that visit is to talk about how things are going and to talk about course choices for next semester. And once that visit has taken place, the hold on advanced registration will be removed from your students' from your students' file, so that they can actually advance register. A couple of other notes to mention. For those of you who can make it, family weekend events are this coming weekend. There are a number of things taking place. There are events about your majoring in what. There are events about the college experience. There's the college brunch on Sunday. And so for those of you who can make it, we hope that you'll make a point to introduce yourself to one of us. All three of us will be there and talk with us personally. Okay, so now we'd like to get on to your questions, leaving time for those. And Dr. Poirot has a list of those questions, and we'll sort of introduce them to the group, and then we'll answer them amongst ourselves.
And more can come in to the email, which is collegewebcast@sas.upenn.edu. So if you have them, send them in during the webcast itself. Some came in ahead of time. And one of them was about advanced registration, which you just answered. Here's another one. Our daughter took a freshman seminar and loved it. Can she take a second one in the spring?
Absolutely. And there's a whole fresh bunch of them. So there's new topics, new departments involved. So if your daughter really liked that experience, she should definitely look into it. She also might look into seminars in any department that she might be interested in exploring for a major, because many of them have, freshman-friendly courses that aren't too large either. So there's plenty of opportunities. And these are great questions for her to talk to her pre-major advisor about.
Yeah. And those courses are a great experience for students to perhaps explore in a small class, fairly intimate setting with their peers and a professor, an area they might be interested in majoring in or at least keeping in mind.
Another one, my son wants to get involved with research but doesn't know how to find these opportunities. What can he do?
Well, there's a couple of things he can do. He can, if he's taking a course right now with someone who's in a department or a field that he thinks he might want to go into, he could certainly talk to that person. He can also, there's a whole bunch of different web resources available, like the Center for Undergraduate Research and Fellowships. They have lots of opportunities explained up there, faculty that explain what they're doing, and that the student could perhaps send an email to and ask to go and talk to, or even send his resume to them. There are, if the student is looking for some kind of paid research position, we have a whole student employment, which also you can search on in terms of research and do it that way. But also, this is one of those questions where if the student talks to their pre-major advisor and they still have more questions, the college office, which is there open 9 to 5 every Monday through Friday, come on in, make an appointment with an assistant dean or come to walk-ins, and we can certainly get you started. And it's a process, and just reminding your student that all of these kinds of things are a process to find a research opportunity that suits them. And you work in laboratories, you can talk about that.
So I'm a professor in the biology department as well as being dean, and I have had for all of my 21 years here undergraduate students doing research with me. One thing I would add to what Janet has said is it's very important for students to think of what they are interested in when considering research. And one of the ways of doing that, which they might not think of, is if you are, say, if you think you're interested in research in, well, biology, to take a department at random, you know, your students should go open the department's website and go down through the list of biology faculty. There are little descriptions of what everybody does. See what's of interest there. Or if your student takes a course with someone in a department that they are very excited about, there's no reason not to go down in front at the end of a lecture and say, gee, professor, I'm really interested in this stuff. Would you have time to talk to me more about it, and are there any research opportunities? This is how those kinds of connections get made. And those research mentor and mentor connections in general are one of the best parts of the undergraduate experience to be had here. But in general, they're not going to sort of reach out and find you as a student. You, the student, have to reach out and find them. And that takes doing some looking, doing some asking, and sort of going out and talking to people.
And remember, everyone who's teaching them, every instructor is doing some kind of research themselves, so they'd be more than happy to chat a student up about that and give them their experiences of how they discovered the rare book library. And I've had students who worked in the rare book library and did all kinds of fascinating research, or in the museum, the archaeological museum, in the art museum, and all of those kinds of things often just happen from a conversation with somebody.
Professors are no exception to the general rule that people love it when you ask them about themselves and what they're thinking about.
A question came in about how and when should parents of freshmen help their students find housing for next year. And obviously this webcast is focused on academics, but Residential Services does have its own website, and under applications and assignments you'll find the information about how returning undergraduates can go about setting up housing.
And I will say something exciting that's happened is that Residential Services, in cooperation with college housing and academic programs, have put together a module for students. It's aimed at first-year students thinking about next year, but anyone can avail themselves of this module, and it just explains how the system works and how you might, decide between various kinds of locations and put in your reservation, etc. We have, as everything at Penn, a very robust technology system called ResLife. So I think that, I'm sure that you can also, when you go to the Residential Services website, you can have access to this module, this TAP module as well. TAP means Thrive at Penn. So we have a whole series of little videos for helping people achieve certain things, like finding the right housing for their second year.
And room selection doesn't start until January or February.
No.
So this
But
is,
that's why getting this module now, so that people's worries and concerns can be tamped down, and so they can recognize how the system works.
Right. Okay. Here's a question that came in. Our daughter was disappointed with her grades on her first midterms and is discouraged. What can she do to get her confidence back?
I'll take a shot at that
Okay.
first,
Okay.
and then you guys can. First thing for you as parents or family to remember, and for your daughter to remember, is that this is not unusual. It happens to all of us. It happened to me as a student. It's not an unusual experience at all in the transition from high school to college. Don't let it get you down about yourself. Don't lose your interest in the subject or in the subjects that you're working on. Don't let yourself start to feel as though, because sometimes students will, oh gee, maybe I don't really belong here or in this subject. That's not the right thing to do. The right thing to do, I'm going to tell a story on my daughter here. And I have her approval for telling it. She just graduated from college last year. She called us, both parents, academics, in her first year of college, And we were saying, how are things going? Oh, pretty well, except for one exam that didn't go very well, and I don't really understand it, and it's kind of got me discouraged. And we said, well, did you go talk to your professor? And she said, oh, no, I don't want to do that. That would make it seem like I don't know what I'm doing. And we said, you dummy, go talk to your professor. It's the strong student who goes and talks to her professor. That's what professors are waiting for. They're waiting for you to come and talk about, well, how can I do better? Where did I go wrong? So that's my first piece of advice, and Janet can, and story on my daughter Emma, but with approval.
Well, and I know Rebecca will say the same thing I'm going to say in terms of it. This is very, very common right now. We're hearing that from a lot of our advisees. Therefore, the normal part of it is just that maybe those study habits that worked really, really well in high school aren't working quite so efficiently now that you're here at college. It might move faster. There could be more reading, there, whatever the thing is. So the question is to step back and look at it as, this is a problem for me to solve, like a riddle, if you want to think about it that way. People in the college office are more than happy to talk about this. We have great partners in the Weingarten Learning Resource Center who often will actually, sort of unpack an exam with the student and show them, oh, you did really well on that part. How did you study for that part? But look over here, you didn't do so well. Let's talk about that. Or, I've never been tested by multiple test choices in high school. What's the sort of psychology or logic of those kinds of things?
The strategy.
So Weingarten is very good. Instructors and teaching assistants are really wonderful with that. But there's also this turning off the dialogue that gets started in the student's head that I'm the only one like this.
Right.
That none of my friends are like this, and frankly, they may not know that many of their friends are just like them because they're still they're still doing a lot of image management with one another, and you want to keep your peers impressed with you. But that's great. I think there's something wrong if you don't hit some kind of an interesting challenge in your first year of college. There's something that you need to learn how to do better.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I think is certainly true, at least in the sciences, which is my area, in the transition from high school level work to college level work, is quite often in high school courses, the emphasis is on, and you're told exactly what to memorize, and you memorize it, and there's no big surprise when you then go to the exam and you're asked to recount what you've memorized. In college level science courses, the emphasis is on deep comprehension and less so on memory. And so a question, even a multiple choice question, which might superficially seem to be about memory, is actually about deep comprehension. Can you reason your way through to a conclusion that you don't remember because you were never given it? And the study skills for that are very different from the study skills when you're just trying to memorize things. And high school students are wonderful at memorizing things. In general, human beings of that age are very good at memorizing things, but they need to learn how to learn this new way of learning when they come to college.
Another question on a related theme. Our child has visited the tutoring center, but they don't have a tutor for her honors science class. They said they'd try and find one for her, but one hasn't materialized yet. What are her options at this point? Thank you for this webcast.
So remember that a tutor is going to be a peer who did very well in that class in the past and is made themselves available to help the student with the content of the course. So it could be that the student's struggle in the course is with the content, and if there's no tutor, go to the instructor. Go to the teaching assistant if there is one in the course. They might be able to help the student come up with a different way. Everybody's going to have office hours, so that, if nothing else, that's an important thing for the student to do. The other thing to recognize is that the student may think the tutor is the answer when a large part of the problem really is that they don't know how to learn in that particular field. And that's where the professional teachers in the Weingarten Learning Resource Center, whose whole field of expertise is how do people acquire new information in different disciplines and how do they consolidate that knowledge, etc. they can maybe help the student realize that if they approach the material differently, they can get command of the content if they had sort of different study techniques. So those are two things that I can recommend. And I do think there may be a difficulty getting tutors. We're having a real high demand for tutors, and
We are.
honors science courses, for example, are often very difficult. They should also talk to their peers, because sometimes in a course like that, students forming little study groups can also improve their memories and their ability to understand something.
Here's another one. I'm worried about my daughter's ability to balance her campus job and varsity team commitment and her academic work. How can students manage when they have so many competing demands? That's certainly difficult.
Yeah. Well, the first somewhat counterintuitive maybe answer to that is to make sure that she is getting enough sleep. Because what happens when you start to not get enough sleep is you enter a sort of feedback loop where you don't do as well, so you don't sleep as much to try to catch up, and then you do even worse, and you sleep even less, and so forth. So while it seems counterintuitive, trying to plan on getting enough sleep, and for human beings of the age of our students, enough sleep means 8 hours a night, basically. And most of our students are running a deficit on that. And so as counterintuitive as that is certainly one of the first things to do, because what happens there, if you get enough sleep, or if you are in the habit of getting enough sleep, is your mental performance is just a notch above where it would be if you're not getting enough. And so things that would normally take a half hour might take 15 minutes if you're well rested. So that's one very basic piece of advice, as hard as it might be to follow.
And I will say, in my advisees who are athletes, I'm usually impressed with their organizational abilities.
Yeah.
Because even in high school, they had to figure out. Now, maybe they had teachers and people at home who were helping keeping them organized, and now it's on them to do it. But I do think athletics, the coaches, the support staff in athletics goes out of their way to help students figure that out. We have special study halls for athletes. We also have our partners in Weingarten Learning Resource Center have done for many of the teams sort of time management things. But it really behooves the athlete to be the person who sort of lives within the schedule they set for themselves, who knows they need 8 hours of sleep and they got to work that out. And who knows, maybe, in the semester when I am in season and I'm doing this traveling with my team, I may arrange my schedule a little differently than another semester when I'm not. And those are all things that pre-major advisors and advisors in the college office are really happy to talk to athletes about. But I think the real key, in my experience with student athletes at a campus like Penn, is they really have to be very organized and proactive, and then they can pull it off, and many of them do.
They do.
The job is the other little wrinkle, and maybe that's something the student comes in and talk to somebody about and cuts back the hours at certain points of time, and that's perfectly normal.
Yeah, cutting back the hours. I mean, I've had, think of it, 3 or 4 varsity athletes in my lab as student researchers who were also doing the bio major or some other major. And it's been remarkable to see how together they can be, and how well they can keep track of things. One thing I've noticed with them, and one thing, to be honest, I learned growing up, and got as advice from an older faculty member when I was here as a very young faculty member, is when you have 15 minutes and there's a little job you can knock off, do it. A little thing, a little letter, or studying for a quiz that might take only reviewing something, taking care of a little piece of business. Be very disciplined about those little gaps of time in your day when you can get small things done. They really do add up, and it really does matter.
And actually, the folks at Weingarten can help with time management if a student goes in very intentionally to sit down with someone and map out their week. Because, of course, there's more in the week, really, than courses and the team and the job. there's sleep, as we talked about. There may be extracurricular commitments. There may be time for socializing or exercise, and
Or
all
eating.
these. Well, yeah, that too. So to get a handle on where you're allocating your time is something anyone could benefit from, and so they can certainly do that, and that can help them feel a little more confident, not running from thing to thing and always trying to fill in the gaps.
There's another thing that goes with sleeping and the notion of allocating your time, which is that, and certainly the athletes I've had in my lab have been good examples of this, you need to allocate free time, but in a disciplined way. You tell yourself as a student or a faculty member or whatever, Saturday afternoon I'm going for a bike ride, or I'm going for a hike, or I'm going out with friends Saturday night. I'm going to do that then, and I'm going to work, at the other times. But I'm not going to move that. That's there. I'm allocating that time for free time, for some rest and recovery, and be very disciplined about that. And if you are, then you will work all the harder during those times when you haven't allocated free time. You'll be all the more careful with your time.
Trying to figure out which ones. How can parents track their students' academic performance as the term progresses, apart from just asking the students? Well, I think just asking the students is the way to go. Students in college can decide whether or not to share their academic information with their parents. So it really is, what they tell you. There is no system set up the way many high schools and districts have it with notifications, because the student is now an adult and the academic records are their private information that they share with people they want to share with. So that's a hard thing for the transition into college for some parents. But
You can live through it, I can tell you this. Both of my sons graduated from Penn, so I had to have great self-restraint. I never looked at their records. I never did. They had their own advisors, and they did it. And the question became, for me, for all of you, how do I have a relationship that's different? Because now this person is becoming an adult, and I love this person, and I only wanted the best for them. But still, you worry because you're a parent, and that's what you do. I have to tell you, there may have been moments when I, had the suspicion there's a little more socializing going on than I would have liked, whatever. I do believe, even my sons, and I believe most of your children still see you as a valuable, safe space. So they will come and tell you things, but you have to get to the place of being comfortable asking them, accepting the amount of information they want to give you, and sort of negotiate that. Also, I think being knowledgeable about it when a student says, gee, I'm really worried about this, or I'm really, I don't know how to deal with this issue. You heard about lots of resources at Penn. Please send them back to us, and we're more than happy to help kind of get things straightened out. I'm not going to talk about FERPA.
yeah. Okay, if a student is pre-med, should they major in biology or chemistry or some other science?
No.
I
I'm one of those people who helped found the Health and Societies major, and I know that there's many Health and Societies majors who go on to go to medical school, as well as psychology majors and historians and political
English
science.
or
English, right.
yeah.
So I know that there's many ways to go to medical school. That doesn't mean, and this is where I would let Paul take over, a science major isn't perfect for a particular student. It's just there are many paths to medical school, and you have to choose your major with you in mind, just not that end goal of medical school.
Yeah. Well, one thing I would say is just to note gently that there is no pre-med designation that a student acquires when they come here as a first-year student. There are forms of advising. If a student tells us, I'm interested in possibly applying to medical school after my college years, then we will keep that in mind, and we'll try to, lay out the right courses that the student will need during their time here. But there is no pre-med designation. There isn't a little box that's ticked that says pre-med on our advisor records or anything like that. There's nothing official. And as Janet said, there are many ways to go through college and go through medical school. Now, that said, many pre-meds do the biology major or our major called biological basis of behavior. Some of them do a chemistry major. But I've known ones that were poli-sci. I know one.
Art historian.
I know one right now who I got to know last year in my intro bio course who was dead set on a bio major. She's now an English major. She's still pre-med, and but she loves it in English, and she's laid out the sequence of courses that she'll need, which is, there's a fairly straightforward sequence of courses that you need, but you don't need the higher level courses in the sciences in general to be eligible to apply for medical school.
Well, here's a good segue. My daughter thinks she wants to be an English major. She has always loved literature and has been a great writer. I want to support her, but I'm concerned she won't have a job after graduation. What would you advise?
The first thing I would say is she's likely to have many jobs and multiple careers after graduation, because that's what happens with many of our graduates in the liberal arts. And an English major or any other liberal arts major is a very good starting point for going on. I've known people who've done the English major and then gone into finance without ever doing an MBA or anything like that. English major and gone into film, one thing or another. So I wouldn't worry too much. But here I'll tell a story just to show you I'm not unsympathetic to that. Again, a story on my daughter. I was driving around with my wife when my daughter was choosing her major. And so my wife, I said, do we know what her major will be? And my wife said, French. And before I could stop myself, I said, what's she going to do with that? So I understand. I understand your perspective. But really, a liberal arts major is so much more than what it says it is. An English major is a range of courses in foundational skills, in the different sectors of knowledge. It's a really comprehensive education that sets you up to calculate, to think, to write, all of the things that people who are looking for entry-level positions in corporations and companies cherish so much these days.
And if you want to convince yourself that this curriculum that we have, where the major is one part, and the general education requirements, which talk about quantitative reasoning and writing abilities and all kinds of things, plus this range of free electives that they can take and shape their own way if they want to take other courses. Those three things really will work together. Go to the Career Services website and pull up they have yearly surveys of what graduating classes do, and you can search by major, and you can see all the wonderful jobs and things that students do in majors. And you can go back and look at several years, and what you will find out is that English majors do quite well. So you can convince yourself with real data too.
But now let's just say one more thing to that, which is that I applaud you and your daughter for thinking about doing what she finds interesting and fulfilling, because that's really at the heart of the education that we offer here, is to go after what you find interesting and fulfilling. And because of the way we've constructed the liberal arts curriculum, it will work out for you as far as, gainful employment after your time here. But really, the heart of it is your interest and your dedication to the subject.
And there was another question that came in about general career guidance and postgraduate job placement, what kind of services there are. We have a career services office that Janet was just referencing for the online data of what graduates do. But undergraduates can go at any point in their career as undergraduates, as first-year students, sophomores, juniors, seniors. Sometimes people wait until they're just getting their resume ready for a job search. The folks at Career Services are ready to talk to people who are trying to figure out what their ideal career would be. that want to do research about the job market in different fields, that want to learn how to do a search for internships and apply for the next summer. They have resources for networking among PAMs. There's a wealth of resources that people can use. They can major in whatever they like and do well in, and at the same time be thinking about how to use their summers for jobs or internships and connecting, doing informational interviews so they can see what a field is like and start, talking to somebody about what it's like to do a certain job all day and how they got there. So there's a lot of resources on campus to think about that, and worrying about the major being a one-to-one correlate with the profession is not the way to go. Just follow the intellectual interests and use career services.
And I had one parent recently thank me, and because I had given her hours of really valuable learning, and I had no idea what this little note that she sent me meant. So when we talked on the phone, I kept referring to information in websites, and she all of a sudden realized how many, like the Weingart Learning Resource Center or Career Services, they're putting videos out there, they've got chat rooms, there's blogs, there's little how-to things that they're all out there for the students to make use of even before and maybe after they talk to someone in those offices. And the parent was actually enjoying herself very much learning how to do things. So avail yourselves. It's all right there for you too.
Okay, here's another one. My child is a great student who has also struggled with ongoing health problems that led to some absences in high school. How is missing class due to illness excused at Penn?
It's not. It's managed, and that I think is a big difference between high school and college learning. College and university learning, it's more like having a job where there really aren't excused absences the way they were in high school when you got a note from your parents to take to the nurse or whatever. What the student has to do is that we have a system called the Course Absence Report System, and that's a way for the student to communicate with the faculty person, the instructor, and let them know that they're not going to be in class. And then it is up to the student and the instructor to work out how the student will make up the missed work. If it's missing a class and it's notes, it might be getting notes from a friend. It might be previewing the slides if the instructor makes the slides available, and then going back and talking to the instructor. Missing quizzes, tests, and things like that, again, it's always better to try to plan in advance with someone to see how if you're going to get a chance to make up that opportunity and how that might work out. This is, a kind of like a communication system. That's how we manage a student having to be out of class. If a student's going to miss more than 5 days of class, then they really should come chat with us in the college office, because they probably need a little more help managing things, because it's really hard to step out of class, especially this time of the semester when there's so much going on.
Another question is, when do students declare majors? I mean, the easy, quick answer is students are required to declare a major by essentially the middle of the second semester in sophomore
March.
year, when they're going into advanced registration for junior fall.
Mm-hmm.
Some people do it earlier, but that's not required and it's not necessarily advised, because people should be dipping their toe into at least a few different options and seeing what it's like to take courses in those fields, and talking to their pre-major advisor about what they are enjoying, what they're being frustrated with in these different environments.
Yes, I mean, and this is similar to the pre-med thing I was mentioning earlier, which is I've talked with first-year students in their first semester who say, I'm a bio major. and I don't say it, but the little voice in my head says, you're not. No, you're not. You're not yet. And please take a look around just in case something else is more fulfilling to you and more interesting. I wouldn't want you to go into any given major, bio, English, history, math, whatever, just because you felt you were obliged to for some reason. You should take a look around and think about it.
And we are serious about this looking around business. We really push back against declaring too early. We have 60-some majors in the College of Arts and Sciences, And yes, some of them are there. It's a subtle, nuanced difference between, say, being a biological basis of behavior major and a biology major doing a neuro concentration.
That's true.
Okay,
Yeah, it's really true.
but the difference, it suits some students really dramatically, and that's important to realize. And letting a student experience some courses, go to a few talks, maybe, joining a club which gives them some extracurricular experiences in somewhere, maybe in the summer internship, they will get information so that when they go to make the choice, it will be an informed choice about which major, and not just, I have to do this now, so I'm going to grab the thing that I know the most about.
Yeah, a really good thing to do is for a student to, find an upper level student who is a major and ask that student, what's it like being an art history major? What's it like being a bio major? What's it like being a chem major? Do you like the resources that are there? Are there good opportunities for research and so forth? That's a really good thing to do, and those upper level students are a really good resource in that way.
And we have a program that makes it very easy to contact majors in their junior and senior years called MAP, the Major Advising Program.
Yep.
You can find it on our website. And students in various majors who have volunteered to make themselves available to
Yep.
first and second year students have their contact information available to anyone who has a pen key. And you
Little
can
bio.
you can reach out
Mhm.
and email with them, or maybe talk, or even go get coffee.
Mhm.
Another resource that's important is the Majors and More Dinner Series. I think we've got, was it somewhere between 14 and 20 per semester, where different majors, different departments and programs will have a dinner where there's food, which is a draw.
Cool.
And students considering that major can sign up and go and get a chance to have a conversation with faculty in the major, and oftentimes they'll bring students, juniors and seniors who are majoring in that subject, and sometimes even alums. So it's a really nice way to get more than you would see on the website, and in an informal setting and with food.
And these Majors and More Dinners is a partnership we in the college and with our departments do with college housing. So these dinners take place in the college houses. So it's also a way for students to go see what it's like inside another college house. And so it's funny, one of my students is living in the Quad this year, went to a major's dinner which was in one of the high rises because, yeah, maybe I'll do that major, but I really wanted to see what life was like in the high rise. And that's fine too. I mean, I think that it's a nice, informal, comfortable way to find out about how people are doing what they're doing at Penn.
But I mean, the biggest thing is to go in and talk with your pre-major advisor and talk about the different options on the table.
Mhm.
And sometimes students are all over the place, and part of them wants to be a music major and part of them wants to be a physics major, and so it's a different kind of conversation than when the disciplines are sort of closer to each other or overlapping. But that's something that can be teased out in conversation, and if they're kind of honest with themselves about what's pulling them for what reasons, after a while they will figure it out. So okay. My child is a first semester student, and he's concerned about the demands of his courses and is thinking about taking one pass-fail. Is that a good idea?
It depends.
Like many of our answers.
Yeah.
You need to come in and talk to
Yeah.
somebody about why you want to take it pass-fail.
Yeah.
Because, are you doing, I've had students come in and say, I think I'm going to get a B in this course and I think I should take it pass-fail. Personally, I think that's a little wacky. I think that do you really know the grade you're going to get in this course? Probably not. If you're taking a course where you want to calibrate your efforts against other things, and there is a reasonable way of dialing back your effort, maybe that's a different logic for taking something pass-fail. But the other issue students need to remember is that when they're electing to take a course pass-fail, it cannot count in the general requirement and it doesn't count in their major. It will be a free elective. every student needs a certain number of free electives, and they're just choosing to spend one of theirs that way, which is perfectly reasonable. But it's better to come in and have a conversation with somebody to figure out, why am I thinking this is a good response to this course or to how I'm doing this semester?
And the philosophy behind offering the option of pass-fail is not so much managing courses in which you're worried about how you're doing. It's more to enable people to explore in areas that they might not go. I mean, if the physics major says, I really want to take this fine arts course, I've never taken one before, in their junior year, then fine. But if you're reflexively reaching for pass-fail as a way to solve an academic problem, maybe you should be thinking about getting more support through tutoring or Weingarten or office hours. So, okay. What are the language requirements for study abroad? Is the 4-semester requirement enough, or do you need more? Depends.
Another depends answer. Where does the student want to go?
Right,
Some
right.
programs require language skills beyond the requirement in language, the sort of survival skills level. That's what their 4 courses will get you, that level of proficiency. Others, we do have abroad courses in Australia, which happen to be in English. So, I mean, you really do have to talk with the student about where are they thinking of going someplace. Why do they want to go there? This is less about destination and more about, well, they've got really cool courses in the things I'm thinking about majoring in, or that minor that I want to do can really be aided by what I would be doing in that program. It is a good time for students to talk about perhaps having study abroad in their career. They don't have to decide now. But if it's someplace they want to go that does require more language, we've got to build that into course choice as we go forward.
Right. There's the Penn Abroad website, which is a spot students can go on the Penn website and look at all the different programs. And there are advanced search options, so you could do it by language of instruction as well as by region. And talking with your pre-major advisor, as you said, about your ideas about possible study abroad in the future is good to do now, even in the first year. Students tend to go abroad junior year, but if, for example, the Spanish-speaking programs have more semesters required than a lot of programs, sometimes as many as the 6th or the 7th semester. So in addition to getting through Spanish 140, you would need to go on to a 5th, 6th, or maybe even a 7th semester before being able to go. So planning is essential. On the other hand, there are some programs where the 4-semester language requirement would do it, and then there are programs where the language of instruction is English. So.
And our partners in Penn Abroad have redone their website fairly recently, and one of the greatest new additions is short little video stories about what they call Penn Abroad ambassadors, but it's students who've had experiences already being abroad, either in an internship or abroad for a semester or even a year, and you can get a flavor for what it's like in different places and the use of language skills, but a whole bunch of other things as well. So I would recommend using that website as a way to just do some exploring.
There were a couple of questions that came in that are not totally about academics, but they're related about student adjustment, which I thought were important. How can students who are shy and feel lonely find ways to develop and foster relationships? It's a great question.
Well, I will say that this is part of House Dean and RAGA training to try to, we recognize that there are students who are more outgoing than others. Sometimes we seem to be specializing in introverts, so the students certainly shouldn't feel alone. There's a lot of people who would like things to be not quite so much in their face. I think college houses can be a good resource there. I think that joining clubs and finding other outlets that way can be helpful. You've got to look around and look for like-minded people. That I think helps a good deal to figure this out. I'm trying to think what else would be a good resource.
Well, I think there's also a kind of an approach. I mean, I think coming through new student orientation, there are a lot of exciting
So
programs
much
can
going
be hard. I mean, I know it would be hard for me, you know, and the sense maybe from social media that one has thousands of friends can build up expectations. And really, you need a few good friends that you find gradually through common interests. And it's, you know, emboldening a student to feel okay reaching out to somebody who, you know, they liked in class because they asked a good question, they want to go for coffee.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, really bring it back down to being grounded and finding a couple of people who you feel connected to and trusting of, and you know, a larger social circle may develop from that, but that's the building block.
Mhm.
And then finding the activities that, you know, are that you're interested in. I mean, not just going out and joining 10 clubs, but you know, if you think, you know, tutoring's been important to you as a high school student and you'd like to give back in that way, the Netter Center has programs in Philadelphia schools, and there's a whole network of people who are students who care about that and work on it together. So that might be a way of finding camaraderie among people who kind of share your values and are doing something that you'd like to do.
Mhm. The only other thing I would add is I've certainly seen in my own teaching over 2 decades, friendships form in my office hours where, you know, every week for a couple of hours my door is open and the same group of students often will be coming in, and you recognize that they start coming in together and leaving together. It gives them a chance in a small group to talk about the subject matter and talk about whatever, and they get to know each other.
And they have a shared interest in that.
Yeah, and there's a
yes.
shared interest, clearly, and so that's another place too, and it has academic benefits.
And the cultural centers around campus have,
Yes,
you know, kind of
for
open
sure.
door and hangout times and events, and people often, you know, find a lot of camaraderie through the cultural
Yes.
centers, you know, which include MACU, La Casa Latina, Penn Women's Center, the LGBT Center, PACH, Pan Asian American
Mhm,
Cultural
mhm.
House, and more recently the Greenfield Intercultural Center in the last couple of years has become the home base for the first generation student organization on campus, and they have a lounge and they have resources and events. So, you know, these cultural centers are, you know, in some sense responding to particular needs of particular groups, but everybody is welcome at any of them, and that's a nice place. Those are nice places to go as well.
For sure.
So another one on that same tack, my daughter's a freshman, and she was hoping to join and try more new things in her college life, such as dancing. She never learned dance before, but she found that all the clubs and after-school activities require some sort of audition before you can get in. So my question is, where would a beginner go to try these new things at Penn?
Well, I think there's some classes
Mhm.
in Patrak and part of the recreation
That's right.
program. So those have to be for beginners. That's part of the way to approach it. Now I'm sure there are intermediate classes too, but taking a class is not a bad way to go.
That's right. Yeah, and I mean, I think, you know, students can form different groups on their own as well. I bet your daughter is not alone. You know, there may be other people who, you know, would like to get together and, you know, create something. So if she's feeling emboldened to get people together to do a dance group that's, you know, not an audition group, then that would be great.
Or if it's just instruction in dance, aside
Mhm.
from on campus, I do know that the city of Philadelphia has
Oh,
many
incredible
small
art scenes, yes.
professional dance troupes that offer instruction in ballet, modern dance,
Jazz,
hip-hop, jazz,
yes.
a whole bunch of different things. And these can be found with a simple web search, and if you get familiar with getting around the city, and often the instruction is very cheap and it's on a per class basis, and it welcomes beginners. And so the city of Philadelphia is a tremendous resource in those ways.
Another question had come in about exam schedules. Where can students get information about exams? And I guess also, you know, what do they need to know to prepare for them? I mean, some people haven't really had final exams as a structure.
Oh, this is about
So it's about
finally.
final exam.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
Yeah.
So syllabi is where they would get information about
Midterms.
midterm exams.
Right, right. The final exam schedule is printed every semester way in advance. The one for this semester is already available.
Been available since August.
Right, right. And so students should go and look up when those exams are for their courses. And I guess the other part of the question was about preparing.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Start now. That's the first answer. And I don't mean to sound heartless, but again, 20 years of teaching, I have seen students in the last 2 days, well, I did it myself as a student, thinking that you can learn a lot of stuff you haven't been working on all along at the college level is not a good idea on the short term. You really should start now, and it starts with your midterms, it starts with building up that body of understanding and the knowledge that braces that understanding into place bit by bit, and it starts with going to office hours. I tell students in my intro bio class, make a hit list of the concepts that you don't understand and put the one you understand least at the top and prioritize getting that, and then go to the next one, and then the next one. And if you can't get it yourself, ask a friend, go to office hours, ask your TA, and so forth. But be really firm with yourself about the fact that your knowledge is wobbly where it's wobbly, because that will topple on you when you go into that final exam. And that's why you start early, and you try to get that feeling that I really understand this solidly. And it's hard to communicate what that feels like to people, but basically, if you know you know something really well as a student, get a feel for what that's like. And then ask yourself, do I feel that way about bio? Do I feel that way about chem, about math? And if not, then you have some distance to go and get started now.
And Weingarten can help a lot.
Again, all those resources
Right.
are
I mean, they have
enormously
actual
helpful.
workshops that deal with preparing for finals that and
Yeah.
avail yourself of one and see what it's like. And now different subjects have different approaches, and that's another thing where instructors and TAs can be very valuable in helping you get insight into the final in this particular course and how it's going to be structured.
And in general, don't think that you can do without sleep
No.
during finals week and cram and do well, because biology is not on your side if you think that way.
Your biology.
Your own biology.
Right.
Right.
Okay, here's, what are SAIL classes?
Structured Active In-Class Learning is what SAIL stands for. And it's a new way of approaching the lecture class. The traditional lecture class, which has a lot to recommend it, and there are many of them on campus, is more of a kind of stand and explain or stand and deliver class where the instructor gets in front of the room and presents material, perhaps with a blackboard or PowerPoint, or just speaking and waving his or her hands around like this. And that's a time-honored and ancient way of teaching. But a more recent development, and it's really actually been around all along because all learning at its heart is active, but we've now begun to develop ways of building this into lecture classes, is to ask students to have the class be more participatory. So where, for example, in a SAIL class, an instructor might give a 10 or 15 minute little introductory lecture module and then break the class into smallish groups and present those groups with a problem to be solved and discussed based on the little introductory module that was given. And then the instructor will go around the room and talk to the groups and see how they're doing in solving that problem or in dealing with that material. And the students talk with themselves, they talk with the instructor, and what this does is it gets the students actively engaged in thinking at that level of deep comprehension I was talking about earlier. And so it does more naturally move toward that kind of deep comprehension. And there is good evidence from around the country and emerging evidence on campus here at Penn too that supports this idea that student confidence, student comprehension, student desire to take another course in the subject, all seem to grow with the SAIL approach.
Question, we only have about 5 more minutes. Someone was interested in hearing about what majors would be good for a pre-law student, since we talked a little bit about pre-med.
You can quite frankly, pre-law majors are, law school wants to know that you have the ability to analyze a large body of data, write about it convincingly to someone else. So you're taking a lot of information and writing about it. You're also probably speaking about it. Law schools, on the infamous test that you take to get into law school, the LSAT, there's an interesting section that deals with quantitative thinking. So a lot of information nowadays is delivered through statistics or through probabilistic thinking. So everyone needs to understand those kinds of things. Those can be delivered through a great many different disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
I do not think law schools actually prefer any major over any other. I have mathematicians who go to law school, and we have history majors that go to law school, and we have biology majors who go to law. I mean, it is in many, many different ways. It is the student recognizing in themselves the desire for that kind of professional training after they've been in college. And the liberal arts education at Penn, because it is pretty well balanced, I think it really does allow you to major in anything and go on to law school.
Yep.
Here's a question about the relationship between a parent and a student when they go off to college. How quickly should a parent wean their first-year student off of relying on them for help in proofreading or editing, etc.?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think that maybe the first cut I'd take at that is obviously we as parents, and I speak as a parent of college-age children, should not be doing the intellectual work of our students for them. So that's a clear boundary. They should be doing their own work. That said, there are ways in which we all help one another in trivial ways. Proofreading, I think, is a pretty good example of that.
If you keep it to proofreading.
If you keep it to proofreading. I mean, if what your student is saying to you is, gee, I just wrote my essay, I like it, but could you just check it for typos? That's fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with checking something for typos. And certainly there's plenty of excitement and joy to be had in talking with your child about what he or she is working on in college, and in the ways in which the ideas that they're thinking about, or arguments about what they're thinking about that they bring home with them, are part of the fun. And these often lead to development on your part as a parent and development on your child's part as a student. So all of that is really important. Now, I'll pivot to the weaning away aspect. And so that starts with an on the other hand. On the other hand, a big part of our children going off to college is that step out into independence and into thinking for themselves and into coming up with and being responsible for their ideas and their performance in the forums that they find themselves in college. And so in that sense, the weaning really begins when you get on the train or shut the car doors and leave when you drop them off here. And it is a fairly big break between you and your child. Then they begin to learn to really think for themselves at that point.
And we have a great writing center that can help them learn the techniques they need,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
they can go there too.
Okay. We have 1 more minute till we're done. Maybe a reminder that family weekend is coming up this weekend, and if
was
you're on
another
campus.
reminder.
Oh, so sometimes students, if they live very far away, are going to be here over Thanksgiving break.
Oh, okay.
Right.
And we have lots of resources that are going to be on campus for Thanksgiving, including plenty of people that like to have a holiday dinner with others, with the people who are in their houses or whatever. So I would urge a student who thinks they're going to be here for the Thanksgiving break to talk to their house dean about, you know, what are the rules about staying in the house, what resources are available, what's there. I know there's information on the College House website, so you can go and look at that. And just recognize that there's lots of people around. This is not by any stretch of the imagination a ghost town for Thanksgiving. There's lots of
Right.
people around.
You can find people to
And
spend.
all sorts of interesting Thanksgiving dinners
Yes,
of many
right.
different forms.
Well, thank you all for listening and participating with your questions. And if you do happen to be here on Family Weekend, as I said, make a point to come and introduce yourselves in person and talk with one of us or other members of the college office who will be on hand for those events. Thanks very much.